Please welcome the next speaker for this morning's program, Mayor Reed from Atlanta.
Good morning. How y'all doing? Y'all, I'm from the South. Y'all have to say good morning to me. You gotta put up with me a little bit. I want to start by thanking Miro Cernigig and Mark Andrew for creating City Age and inviting me to participate in this year's summit and to be with you. And also just to be among a group of speakers and presenters who I think are very talented, certainly on the topics that we have today. I really value the opportunity to speak to groups like this, certainly on this topic, because one of the great things about being mayor of the city is that cities are where hope meets the street. And I believe that this is going to be the century of cities for a number of reasons. One, the global population and the domestic population in the United States is moving towards cities, and that's where I think our economic growth is going to occur. So we all know as we sit here today that 70% of our country's GDP right now is occurring in cities, and that number is growing. We know that globally, 54% of the world's GDP is in cities, and that number is growing. So despite what folks think about the federal government or the state government, the energy, in my opinion, is going to continue to move in the direction of cities. One fact that I think is going to contribute to this in a significant way just is our federal government's failure to perform in a way that is reliable to us all. And I sense that people across all levels are candidly getting fed up with it and are finding different paths to move a forward-thinking agenda that improves people's lives. So you used to have this massive concentration of energy towards the federal level by our country's most talented people, because that's where you thought you could get the biggest bang for your buck. And I think that most folks would acknowledge that that certainly isn't the case right now and has not been the case over the last 3, 5, 6, and 8 years. But what does that mean? That means that talent is going to go somewhere else. I see it in the city of Atlanta with the kind of people that we're able to attract into my administration, because the only calling card we have as mayors is that we get to do cool stuff. When I got sworn in on January 4th, 2010, the city of Atlanta, which is arguably the most important city, I believe it is, but it's one of the most important cities in the Southeast, was facing a $48 million budget shortfall. The 2008 budget that was passed in the general fund was about $640 million out of $1.7 billion. The budget that I just passed on Monday was $540 million. So cash versus the 2008 levels to the 2012 levels was down $100 million. We were all going through the worst economy that we had all experienced in 80 years, and things were very, very tough. But we actually took advantage of that. We took advantage of it to make decisions that we thought needed to be made, and then because of the external circumstances that we were going through, had to be made. But we wanted to do it a little differently. When I walked into office, we had a $1.5 billion underfunded pension. And right now, cities across the United States of America have $200 billion in unfunded pension liability. States across the United States of America have about $1 trillion of unfunded pension liability. We took that as an opportunity. We passed the most sweeping pension reform of any major American city, certainly in the last 10 years. And as a result, a liability that was eating 18% of revenue coming into the door of the city of Atlanta has now been reduced. We've saved $270 million over 10 years, $500 million over 30 years, and we have been able to invest in critical parts of our city. We've hired 800 police officers. We've stood up the largest police force in the history of the city of Atlanta. But we've also been able to speak to our hearts. We've opened every single recreation center in the city of Atlanta because of those savings. Every single pool in the city of Atlanta. So we've converted centers that used to simply house kids into places where young people receive character training, have access to technology. They're open until 8 o'clock in the evenings, and they are really safe havens for young people. So what was a problem and a glaring liability, we changed. But we didn't bash labor and unions in the process. We actually had the support of every major labor union and passed our pension reforms with a unanimous vote of the Atlanta City Council. I think it's important because what it shows is that you can take on a very tough, protracted problem like pension reform, and you can pass it sweeping changes in a way that treats other people with dignity and respect. And we also made another decision. We decided that we weren't going to try to cut our way to prosperity. In the toughest times, we did what other mayors across the city, across the country are doing. We made huge infrastructure investments. We invested a $1.5 billion in a 1.2 million square feet gold LEED certified international terminal that gives the city of Atlanta almost unmatched connectivity to the rest of the world. We made those investments in tough times. And as I stand here today, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in the city of Atlanta is the busiest passenger airport on the planet Earth, handling 95 million passengers last year, handling 13 million more passengers than Beijing's airport. So we were able to make a critical infrastructure investment that gives the city international connectivity to more than 50 countries around the world, that improves our economic competitiveness, and allows the corporate, the Fortune 500 businesses, the small businesses, and the medium-sized businesses in the city of Atlanta to connect to 80% of the country's population in 2 hours or less. We also decided that we were going to focus on sustainability and not just talk about it, but do something about it. We launched an initiative that was recognized last week at the Clinton Global Initiative as a model initiative for the United States of America. It's a program called the Atlanta Beltline. The Atlanta Beltline really is nothing more than a 22-mile old track that really had been left to deteriorate as people moved into the center of the city. It has a lot in common with New York's High Line. We have reclaimed the Atlanta Beltline, and we have invested $350 million in an effort to preserve 1,300 acres of green space, provide walk paths, bike paths in the city of Atlanta, and the $350 million that we have invested in the Atlanta Beltline has leveraged $1 billion in private investment today. What's the point? The point is we're doing the right things in terms of sustainability, and they're leading to very positive reactions from the private sector, and we're doing it all in cities. Now, what's the difference? The difference is when I need to move an agenda item like the ones that I've just referenced, I take that vote to a council that consists of 15 members, and I need 8 to move an initiative. And I think that that is one of the reasons that you see more and more highly talented people like your own mayor, Michael Bloomberg, making the decision to invest and be a part of a movement for cities. If you look to the Midwest and think about Rahm Emanuel, I think the chief of staff for the President of the United States of America is a pretty big job, pretty important job. Rahm Emanuel made the decision that he would rather be mayor of Chicago, and I was with him last week in Chicago, and if you asked him whether he wanted to be mayor of Chicago or chief of staff for the President of the United States, the answer isn't even close. He would rather be leading a city. And one of the initiatives that he's launched is the Infrastructure Bank in Chicago. And he's had to develop an Infrastructure Bank in Chicago initiative because the federal government will not invest in infrastructure in a way that is needed for the overall success of the United States of America. So what is happening in cities right here, right now, is we are taking on problems and figuring out how to solve them without the traditional help that we have received from the federal government, and we are succeeding at it. So today in the city of Atlanta, when I walked in the door, we had $7.4 million in reserves. That's in a government with a $1.7 billion budget. Today we've grown cash 17 times. We have more than $126 million in reserves because we've been making the right financial decisions. Violent crime in the city of Atlanta is down to 1969 levels. Last year in the city of Atlanta, 83 people were murdered. One murder is too many, but that was the lowest number of murders in our city since Lyndon Johnson was president of the United States. And this is why I think that you should continue to give your time, your energy, your talents, and your passion to cities around the country. Because I tell folks all the time, if you really want to change the world, you ought to give your energy to cities. Otherwise, you're going to spend your whole life trying to do it. And mayors have a sense of urgency because we know at most, if we're lucky, that we get 8 years to try to implement change. 8 years is very close to a decade for us. But what we're able to do and the speed with which we're able to do it is unmatched by both states and unmatched by the federal government. We also get to engage in important partnerships. My goal as the mayor of Atlanta is to make the city of Atlanta the logistics hub in the Western Hemisphere, which sounded pretty crazy to most people when I started. But we've got the busiest passenger airport in the world. I have made our cargo airport capability a priority. And I've worked shoulder to shoulder with our Republican Governor, Nathan Deal, to deepen the port of Savannah to give us connectivity when the Panama Canal opens in 2015 or 2016. So that will give us a major port capability. We have one of the 4 fastest growing ports in the United States of America and the 4th largest container port, about 2.5 miles, about 3 miles away from Atlanta in Savannah, Georgia. So we're making the investments that great cities are trying to make, you all. Thinking about the environment, a few years ago, President Clinton and President Obama launched the Better Buildings Challenge. We took a bill to City Council that simply said we were going to have a goal of reducing energy use by 20% by the year 2020. As of today, more than 50 million square feet of private sector buildings have made the decision to join the Better Buildings Challenge and implement a program to retrofit those buildings, which has the benefit, of course, of reducing our carbon footprint, making us more energy efficient, but it also helps the more than 25,000 people who lost jobs in the construction sector because the amount of vertical construction has been significantly reduced. Now we're putting those very same construction workers back to work, retrofitting those buildings in the city of Atlanta. Because at the end of the day, cities really are where hope meets the street. I can really tell how I'm doing on many days by what happens when I walk into my local grocery store. You know, sometimes if people walk towards you and want to say hello, you know you're doing well, and when they push the cart by you real fast, you know things probably aren't going too well. You need to check out what's going on. But I will tell you all, every day that I've been mayor of the city of Atlanta, I've loved it. And when I spend time with Mayor Bloomberg, who has been a strong partner with the city of Atlanta, we're one of the recipients of the Bloomberg Innovation Delivery Grant, led by a woman who's here today named Kristen Wilson. We're focusing on eliminating street homelessness in the city of Atlanta. He still has that same kind of energy, passion, and focus because he sees real change on a day-to-day basis. The same thing is true with Rahm Emanuel. The same thing is true with Mayor Booker. The same thing is true with Mayor Castro in San Antonio, Texas. We're doing special things. And I think that to the extent that you want to be a part of it, the door is open to you. And it can happen faster in cities than anywhere else. So thank you for giving me some time today. I hope that our paths cross in the future, and I'm so grateful for you giving me time to be with you. Thank you so much. God bless you.